The company stole my idea. My patent lawsuit cost them $500 million. We're going in a different direction, my boss said, sliding my prototype across the conference table like it was garbage. 3 years of work. 18-hour days. A revolutionary battery technology that could change everything. And he was dismissing it with 8 words. But the tests prove it works, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The energy density is triple anything on the market. It's not what we need right now. He stood, signaling the meeting was over. Thanks for your effort, Caleb. We'll keep your notes on file. I watched him walk out, taking my prototype with him. Something in his tone felt wrong. The way he'd said, keep your notes on file, with that slight smirk. 6 months later, that same company announced a revolutionary new battery technology. My battery technology. Same design, same chemistry, same everything. Except now it had their logo on it, and a $2 billion valuation. They thought I was just another disposable engineer. Another worker bee who'd quietly move on. They didn't know I'd documented everything. Every email, every test result, every meeting, and most importantly, the patent application I'd filed 3 weeks before they fired me. What happened next didn't just cost them money. It cost them their reputation, their stock price, and their CEO's freedom. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and drop where you're watching from, because what comes next? They tried to bury me. I buried them instead. But that wasn't where it started. My name is Caleb Durant, and 3 years ago, I thought I was living the dream. I was 29, working as a senior battery engineer at Apex Energy Solutions in San Jose, California. Apex was one of those rising tech companies, well-funded, ambitious, and promising to revolutionize renewable energy storage. The kind of place where young engineers believed they could change the world. I'd been recruited straight out of my master's program at MIT. The hiring manager, a guy named Preston, had sold me on the vision. We're not just building batteries, Caleb. We're building the future. And we want people like you leading the charge. The salary was good. The benefits were great. And most importantly, they gave me freedom to experiment, to push boundaries, to think beyond conventional battery chemistry. My girlfriend Natalie was supportive, even when I worked late nights and missed dinners. You're going to do something amazing, she'd say, kissing my forehead as I hunched over my laptop at midnight. I can feel it. She was right. I just didn't know the cost yet. The breakthrough came 14 months into my employment. I'd been experimenting with a novel electrode design using graphene-enhanced silicon anodes. The theoretical energy density was off the charts, but everyone said it was impossible to stabilize. I proved them wrong. My prototype battery held triple the charge of conventional lithium-ion cells, charged in a quarter of the time, and didn't degrade over charge cycles. It was the kind of innovation that could revolutionize everything from electric vehicles to grid storage. I was ecstatic. I immediately scheduled a meeting with Preston and the senior leadership team to present my findings. This is big, I told Natalie the night before the presentation. If they approve this for production, we're talking about changing the entire energy industry. I'm so proud of you, she said, squeezing my hand. Trust was earned, not given. That's what my dad used to say before he died. I thought I'd earned Apex's trust through hard work and innovation. I didn't realize that in corporate America, trust was just another word for useful until you're not. The presentation went perfectly. The leadership team asked intelligent questions. Preston seemed genuinely impressed. The CTO, a woman named Veronica Marsh, took detailed notes. This is exactly the kind of innovation we need, Preston said at the end. Caleb, I want you to write up everything. Full technical specs, test results, manufacturing requirements. We'll fast-track this through R&D approval. I spent the next 2 weeks documenting everything. Every calculation, every test result, every failed attempt that led to the successful design. I created a comprehensive technical manual that could allow any competent engineer to replicate my work. I handed it over, proud and naive, thinking I was contributing to something bigger than myself. That's when everything changed. 2 weeks after I submitted my documentation, I was called into Preston's office. We need to talk about your project, he said, not meeting my eyes. I sat down, excited to hear about next steps. Maybe they were ready to move into prototype production. Maybe there'd be a promotion, a bonus, recognition. We've decided to shelve your battery design, Preston said flatly. The words didn't make sense. What? Why? The tests were conclusive. The manufacturing costs are too high. The market isn't ready. We need to focus on incremental improvements to existing technology, not moonshots that might not pan out. But it already panned out. I built a working prototype. The data proves. Caleb, the decision is made. His tone shifted, harder now. We appreciate your effort, but we're going in a different direction. You'll be reassigned to the lithium-sulfur team under Barry's supervision. Reassigned. Demoted. After creating the most significant breakthrough in battery technology in a decade. This doesn't make sense, I said, my voice rising. You saw the results. You know what this could mean. The meeting is over. Report to Barry on Monday. I left his office in a daze. Something was deeply wrong. You don't shelve breakthrough technology because of market readiness. At least until they filed, or until someone else did. I made a decision that would change everything. At 3 a.m. on a Thursday morning, I filed a provisional patent application in my own name, claiming the graphene-enhanced silicon anode design as my invention. Cost, $400 and 3 hours of furious typing. Timeline to full patent. 12 months if I filed the complete application. I had no idea if it would matter. I just knew I couldn't let them bury my work and claim it as their own later. That's when I stopped being the victim and started taking notes. The reassignment to Barry's team was humiliating. Barry Patterson was a 20-year veteran who resented anyone with advanced degrees. He gave me grunt work, data entry, equipment calibration, tasks a first-year engineer could do. Preston says you need to learn some humility, Barry told me on my first day. So you're starting from the bottom. I smiled and nodded, and I started documenting everything. I created a detailed timeline in an encrypted notebook app on my personal phone. Every meeting, every conversation, every email. I noted when my access to files was revoked, when my prototype disappeared, when my project was officially marked as discontinued. I also started quietly reaching out to other engineers who'd left Apex. Through LinkedIn, I found 3 people who'd departed in the last 2 years under suspicious circumstances. I messaged each of them carefully, asking vague questions about their experience. 2 ignored me. The third, a guy named Wesley Brooks, called me directly. They stole your work, didn't they? He said without preamble. I think so, but I can't prove it. They did it to me too. I developed a new thermal management system. They told me it wasn't viable, reassigned me, then fired me 6 months later. A year after that, they released a product with my exact design. Did you do anything about it? I tried. Got a lawyer. But I hadn't kept good records. Couldn't prove the timeline. Couldn't prove they'd used my specific designs. The lawyer said without documentation, it was my word against the corporations. I dropped it. I have documentation, I said quietly. Silence. Then, keep gathering it. Every email, every file, every conversation. And Caleb? Get out of there before they find a reason to fire you with cause. It's harder to sue if they can paint you as a problem employee. I took his advice seriously. I started coming in exactly on time, leaving exactly on time. I smiled, nodded, and did exactly what Barry asked. Model employee. No complaints. No attitude. But I also did something else. I contacted a patent attorney. Her name was Adrienne Walsh, and she specialized in intellectual property theft. I found her through a recommendation from an MIT professor who'd had his own corporate IP dispute years ago. Tell me everything, Adrienne said in our first meeting. I showed her my provisional patent application, my archived files proving I'd developed the technology, the internal disclosure form I'd submitted to Apex, and the database showing they'd never filed a patent. She leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. This is good. This is very good. Can I actually win? If what you're telling me is accurate, you own this patent. The question is whether Apex will try to claim it under your employment agreement. Do you have your contract? I did. I'd saved everything. Adrienne read through it carefully. Here's the relevant clause. Employee agrees that inventions developed using company resources or during company time become company property. That's standard. But here's the interesting part. Company agrees to file patent applications for employee inventions within 6 months of disclosure. They didn't file. No, they didn't. Which means they breached the contract. And when they breached, the rights reverted to you. Especially since you filed the provisional patent in the gap period. So what do? We wait. We let your provisional patent mature into a full application. We document every step they take with your technology. And when they make their move, and they will make their move, we hit them with everything. The symbolic object that would become key to everything was a small USB drive. I'd backed up every version of my work, every email, every test result. I kept it on my keychain, a constant reminder of what was at stake. Every night, I'd add new documentation to it. Photos of equipment I'd used. Emails from Preston praising my work before it was shelved. Internal memos discussing future battery initiatives that sounded suspiciously like my design. I was building a case. I just didn't know yet how big it would become. 4 months after my reassignment, Apex made their move. I was called into HR on a Friday afternoon. Preston was there, along with Veronica and a woman I didn't recognize, probably their attorney. "Caleb, we're letting you go," Preston said without emotion. "Your performance hasn't met expectations, and we're eliminating your position as part of a restructuring." It was a lie. My performance reviews had been excellent, but I'd been expecting this. "I understand," I said calmly. "I'll pack my things. Your access has already been revoked. Security will escort you out. You'll receive 2 weeks severance." I stood up, making sure to look defeated. Let them think they'd won. Let them think I'd slink away quietly. As security walked me out, the ultimate humiliation, being treated like a criminal, I saw Barry smirking from his desk. Other engineers looked away, probably afraid they'd be next. I drove home, my hands shaking with rage, and called Adrian. "They fired me." "Perfect," she said. "Perfect. Now we know they're serious. They're clearing the decks. Which means they're about to commercialize your technology." She was right. 6 weeks later, Apex announced a major press conference. Revolutionary battery technology to change energy storage forever. I watched the live stream from my apartment, Natalie beside me, as Preston and Veronica unveiled what they called the Apex Infinity Cell. It was my design. Every detail. The graphene-enhanced silicon anode, the specific electrogeometry, even the charging protocol I'd developed. They'd changed nothing except the name. The tech press went crazy. Apex's stock jumped 30% in one day. Venture capital firms were calling it the breakthrough of the decade. Preston was being interviewed on CNBC, calling himself a visionary leader in energy innovation. Natalie looked at me, horrified. They just stole it. They're not even pretending it's something else. "Good," I said, my voice cold. "The more public they make it, the harder they'll fall." I called Adrian. "It's time." "I've been preparing," she said. "Your full patent application was approved last week. You officially hold U.S. patent 11,247,893 for graphene-enhanced silicon anode battery with rapid charge capability. And Apex just publicly admitted they're using it. What's our next move? We file suit. Patent infringement, theft of trade secrets, breach of contract, and fraud. And Caleb, we're not asking for damages. We're asking for an injunction. We're going to stop them from selling a single unit." The midpoint twist came 3 days later. Adrian called me, her voice tense. "Apex didn't just steal from you. I've been digging through their other product launches. They've done this before, at least 5 times in the last 7 years. They recruit talented engineers, extract their innovations, then fire them and claim the work as their own. We can prove that. I've found 3 other former employees willing to testify. Wesley Brooks is one of them. This isn't just about your patent anymore, Caleb. This is about exposing a systematic pattern of intellectual property theft." I sat in silence, absorbing the weight of what she was saying. I thought I was fighting to reclaim my own work. I didn't realize I was building a weapon that would take down an entire corporate fraud scheme. "How big can this get?" I asked. "If we win, we're not talking about a settlement. We're talking about criminal charges for the executives, disgorgement of profits, and enough damages to bankrupt the company. This is a RICO case waiting to happen." I thought about all the engineers like me who'd been chewed up and discarded, all the innovations that had been stolen, all the careers destroyed so Preston and Veronica could build their empire on other people's genius. "Let's do it," I said. "Let's take them down completely." We filed the lawsuit on a Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, it was national news. Former engineer sues Apex Energy for patent infringement, claims systematic theft of employee innovations. The complaint was devastating. 80 pages detailing not just my case, but the pattern of behavior. Wesley's thermal management system. A woman named Claire who developed a solar inverter design. A man named Omar who'd created a new charging algorithm. All of them stolen. All of them fired. All of them silenced with severance agreements and NDAs that we were now challenging as void due to fraud. Apex's stock dropped 15% before trading was halted. Their PR team issued a statement. These allegations are baseless. All technology developed at Apex is the result of collaborative team efforts. We will vigorously defend against this frivolous lawsuit. But the damage was done. Tech journalists started investigating. They found more former employees. They dug through patent records and found suspicious patterns. They interviewed industry experts who confirmed that Apex's innovations looked remarkably similar to designs that had been circulating in academic circles years earlier. The narrative shifted from innovative company to potential fraud. Investors started demanding answers. Board members called for an independent investigation. Major customers began reconsidering their contracts. Nobody wanted to buy stolen technology and risk their own legal exposure. Within 2 weeks, Apex's market value had dropped by 40%. Preston tried to fight back. He gave interviews claiming I was a disgruntled employee who'd never made significant contributions. He showed internal documents I'd helped create, and claimed they proved Apex had developed the technology independently. But Adrian had anticipated this. We released our own evidence. My original technical drawings from before I'd submitted anything to Apex, timestamped files from my personal backup, emails where Preston himself praised my revolutionary design. The court of public opinion turned decisively against them. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Adrian filed for a preliminary injunction, arguing that Apex should be barred from selling the Infinity Cell until the patent dispute was resolved. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks after we filed. I sat in the courtroom, wearing my only suit, watching Apex's legal team, 6 attorneys from a white-shoe law firm, array themselves against Adrian and her 2 associates. They outgunned us in resources, but we outgunned them in truth. The judge, a woman named Patricia Volkman, listened to both sides present their arguments. Apex's lead attorney, a man named Quincy Ashford, was smooth and confident. Your Honor, Mr. Durant was an employee. Everything he created belonged to Apex under his employment contract. This is a clear-cut case of an ex-employee trying to extort his former employer. Adrian stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A, Mr. Durant's provisional patent application, filed while he was still employed at Apex, 3 weeks after he submitted his internal disclosure form. Exhibit B, the company's own policy requiring patent applications within 6 months. Exhibit C, the Patent Office database showing Apex never filed. They breached their own policy, voiding their ownership claim. And Exhibit D, she pulled up a document on the screen. An internal email from Preston Hale to Veronica Marsh, sent 2 days after Mr. Durant's presentation, stating, "This technology is worth billions. We need to get Durant's signature on a broader IP assignment before he realizes what he's created." The courtroom went silent. They knew what they had, Adrian continued. They knew it was Mr. Durant's invention, and they deliberately tried to trick him into signing away rights while concealing the true value. That's fraud, Your Honor, and fraud voids any contract. Judge Volkman looked at Apex's attorneys. Do you have a response to this email? Quincy shuffled papers, looking less confident. Your Honor, that email is taken out of context. It seems very clear in context, Counselor. Preliminary injunction granted. Apex Energy Solutions is hereby barred from manufacturing, selling, or licensing the Infinity Cell technology pending resolution of this case. Next hearing in 60 days. The gavel came down. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Natalie squeezed my hand. Adrian gathered her papers, professional and calm, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. We'd won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. The injunction devastated Apex. They'd already taken hundreds of pre-orders for the Infinity Cell. Major automotive companies had signed contracts worth billions. Energy storage projects had been planned around the technology. All of it ground to a halt. The financial press turned vicious. Apex Energy's billion-dollar fraud. How a stolen patent brought down a unicorn. Preston tried to salvage the situation. He held a press conference, flanked by Quincy and several board members. I watched it from Adrian's office, eating cold pizza and taking notes. We made errors in documentation, Preston admitted, looking somber. But the core innovation was a team effort. Multiple engineers contributed. A reporter interrupted. Mr. Hale, we've obtained internal documents showing you explicitly praised Mr. Durant's solo breakthrough in emails to investors. How do you reconcile that with your current claims of team development? Preston's face reddened. Those emails were simplified for investor communication. The technical reality was more complex. Are you saying you lied to investors about who developed your flagship technology? The press conference imploded from there. Reporters smelled blood. They pushed harder on the other cases, on the pattern of behavior, on the suspicious number of restructuring layoffs that preceded major product launches. Preston stormed off stage after 20 minutes, refusing to answer more questions. The SEC announced an investigation the next day. If Apex had misrepresented their IP ownership to investors, that was securities fraud. Criminal, not just civil. 2 board members resigned. 3 major investors pulled their funding. The company's credit lines were frozen by nervous banks. Apex was collapsing, and I had a front-row seat. But the moment that gave me the most satisfaction came 3 weeks after the injunction. I was getting coffee near my apartment when I saw him. Preston Hale, sitting alone in a cafe, looking 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. He saw me. Our eyes met. For a moment, I thought he might ignore me, might pretend we were strangers. Instead, he walked over. You destroyed me, he said quietly. Not angry, just stating a fact. No, I replied, my voice calm. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. That technology could have changed the world. Now it's tied up in litigation. Nobody wins. I felt a flash of the old anger, but I kept my voice level. You could have done this right. You could have honored my patent, negotiated a licensing deal, given me credit and compensation. Instead, you tried to erase me and steal my life's work. So no, Preston, don't talk to me about what could have been. You made your choices. He stood there for a moment, then walked away without another word. I went back to my apartment and told Natalie what happened. He actually tried to make me feel guilty. I said, still processing it. Like I'm the bad guy for defending my own patent. That's what people like him do, she said. They can't accept responsibility, so they blame the victim for fighting back. She was right, and I wasn't done fighting. The trial took 18 months to reach court. In that time, Apex's situation went from bad to catastrophic. The SEC investigation found multiple instances of securities fraud. Preston and Veronica had explicitly told investors that Apex owned all rights to the Infinity Cell technology, despite knowing my patent existed. That was material misrepresentation. Criminal charges were filed against both of them, along with the CFO who'd signed off on the fraudulent financial statements. The civil trial focused on damages. Adrienne's strategy was brilliant. Rather than arguing for a specific dollar amount, she argued that Apex had been unjustly enriched by my technology and should disgorge all profits and valuation gains attributable to the Infinity Cell. That meant the billion-dollar valuation increase, the pre-order contracts, the investor funding, all of it tied to stolen technology. Apex's defense collapsed when Wesley, Claire, and Omar all testified. The pattern was undeniable. The jury heard story after story of talented engineers being exploited, fired, and erased while their innovations became corporate products. The corporate media narrative shifted from patent dispute to systemic fraud. Think pieces appeared in tech journals about the dark side of innovation culture. LinkedIn was full of posts from engineers sharing their own stories of IP theft. I became, weirdly, a symbol. The guy who'd fought back against corporate exploitation and won. People I'd never met sent me messages of support. Engineers at other companies started filing their own patent applications, protecting their work before sharing it with employers. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Patent infringement, guilty. Theft of trade secrets, guilty. Fraud, guilty. Breach of contract, guilty. Damages, $490 million. The number made headlines everywhere. $500 million patent verdict against Apex Energy. But the money wasn't the point, though it would certainly change my life. The point was the complete destruction of Apex's credibility. Within a week, Apex filed for bankruptcy. Preston, Veronica, and the CFO were convicted on criminal charges, 3 years each in federal prison. The board voted to liquidate the company's assets. Every employee was laid off. The Infinity Cell technology was formally licensed to a legitimate company that agreed to pay ongoing royalties. The public humiliation was total. Preston's face appeared in every business school case study about corporate ethics failures. Veronica gave a tearful interview about how ambition had blinded her to basic morality. The CFO just went quietly to prison. I felt no joy watching them fall, just a grim satisfaction that justice had been served. But the real reckoning came when I received a call from the patent office. They wanted to interview me about improving the patent disclosure system to better protect employee inventors. I'd gone from dismissed engineer to policy influencer. My case was literally changing how the system worked. You didn't just win your case, Adrian told me over celebratory drinks after the verdict. You changed the conversation. That's legacy. I didn't plan to visit Preston in prison. But 8 months into his sentence, I got a letter. Caleb, I know you have no reason to care what I think, but I need to say something, even if you never read this or respond. I was wrong. Not just legally, morally. I convinced myself that taking your innovation was justified because we would bring it to market faster, reach more people, do more good. I told myself the ends justified the means. But that was a lie I told myself to avoid admitting the truth. I was jealous. You created something I never could. And instead of celebrating that, supporting you, making you a partner in the success, I tried to erase you and claim your genius as my own. I destroyed my life, my company, and dozens of careers because I couldn't handle the fact that someone younger and smarter had outshone me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking if you'd be willing to meet once so I can apologize in person. Not for my sake, for yours. So you know that at least one person whose life you changed understands what they took from you and regrets it. Preston. I showed the letter to Natalie. She read it twice. What do you think? I think he's in prison with nothing but time to think about his choices. Maybe he means it. Maybe he's just looking for redemption. Do you want to see him? I did actually. Not for closure. I'd already moved on. But because I wanted to look him in the eye one more time and let him see that I'd won not just legally, but in every way that mattered. I drove to the federal prison on a gray Saturday. Went through security. Sat in the visiting room with fluorescent lights humming overhead. Preston walked in wearing prison khakis, looking thin and exhausted. He sat down across from me, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Thank you for coming, he finally said. I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you. He folded his hands on the table. I've had a lot of time to think. About who I became. About the people I hurt. You most of all. You hurt a lot of people, Preston. Wesley. Claire. Omar. The employees who lost their jobs when Apex collapsed. I know. His voice cracked. I tell myself I was just playing the corporate game, that everyone cuts corners, that I was doing what I had to do to compete. But that's bullshit. I was a thief. I stole your work because I wanted the credit and the money and the status. And I destroyed lives to get it. I watched him carefully, looking for signs of manipulation, of performance. But all I saw was a broken man confronting what he'd become. Why did you really do it? I asked. You had a successful company. You didn't need my battery to survive. Because it wasn't enough. He looked at his hands. I was never the genius. I was the business guy, the connector, the salesman. And every day, I looked at engineers like you and felt inadequate. So when you created something revolutionary, something that made Apex matter, I couldn't stand that it came from you. I needed it to be mine. The honesty was almost painful to hear. I can't give you forgiveness, I said quietly. That's not mine to give. You destroyed too many lives. I know. I'm just asking that you hear me say it. I'm sorry. For stealing from you. For trying to erase you. For teaching an entire company that exploitation was acceptable. I'm sorry. We sat in silence. Around us, other inmates talked with their families, their lawyers, their clergy. People trying to maintain connections to the outside world. What will you do when you get out? I asked. I don't know. I'm disbarred from corporate leadership. My reputation is destroyed. Maybe I'll teach ethics at a community college. The irony wouldn't be lost on me. I almost laughed. Almost. The battery, Preston said. The Infinity Cell. It's in production now, right? Yeah. Licensed to a company that's actually bringing it to market legitimately. It's going into electric vehicles next year. Grid storage the year after. So it's changing the world. Like you always said it would. Like I always said it would, I confirmed. Preston smiled sadly. I'm glad. I'm glad you won. Not just the lawsuit, everything. You deserved it. I stood up. The visit had lasted 20 minutes. That was enough. Preston, I hope you figure out who you want to be when you get out. But it can't be the person who steals from people who trust him. That person destroyed everything he touched. I know, he said quietly. I'm working on it. I walked out of that prison and didn't look back. 3 years after the verdict, my life is unrecognizable from the struggling engineer who got fired for creating something revolutionary. The settlement money, after legal fees and taxes, left me with enough to never worry about money again. But more importantly, it gave me freedom to do work that mattered. I started my own battery research lab. Not a company focused on profit, a nonprofit research institute dedicated to developing clean energy technology and making it freely available. We patent everything, but we license it affordably to manufacturers who commit to sustainable practices. Wesley works with me. So does Claire. We're building the collaborative, ethical environment we wish we'd had at Apex. Natalie and I got married last year. She jokes that she's married to a patent crusader. I tell her someone has to keep corporate America honest. The Infinity Cell is everywhere now. The company I licensed it to has installed battery systems in 12 countries. Electric vehicles using my technology can drive 600 miles on a single charge. Grid storage is making renewable energy actually viable at scale. I was invited to speak at MIT last month. Stood in front of auditorium full of engineering students and told them my story. Not as a warning, as a roadmap. Document everything, I told them. Know your rights. Don't let anyone convince you that your work belongs to someone else just because they gave you a salary. You are not disposable. Your innovations matter. And if someone tries to steal from you, fight back. The system isn't perfect, but it works if you have evidence and courage. The applause was overwhelming. A young woman approached me afterward. My company just rejected my design, she said nervously. They said it wasn't viable. But I know it works. What should I do? I pulled out my wallet and handed her Adrian Walsh's business card. Call her. Tell her I sent you. And file a provisional patent tonight. Don't wait. She thanked me with tears in her eyes. That's the real revenge, I realized. Not the money, not the verdict, not even the criminal convictions. The revenge is changing the system so the next engineer doesn't go through what I did. So corporations think twice before they exploit their employees. So innovation is protected instead of stolen. Preston got out of prison 6 months ago. I heard he's teaching business ethics at a state college in Nevada. I don't know if he's really changed, but I hope he has. Not for his sake, for the students who'll learn from his mistakes. Apex Energy Solutions is gone. The domain redirects to a law firm's bankruptcy notice. The office building is occupied by a different tech company now. The Apex name is a cautionary tale. And me? I'm standing in my research lab, watching engineers test the next generation of battery technology that will be developed ethically, patented properly, and shared responsibly. I think about that USB drive on my keychain, the one that held all the evidence that changed everything. I still carry it, even though I don't need it anymore. It's a reminder that truth, when properly documented, is more powerful than any corporation. You can steal ideas. You can steal designs. You can even steal credit. But you can't steal integrity. And in the end, that's what wins. The company tried to bury me. They thought I was just another disposable engineer who'd move on quietly after being exploited. They learned the hard way that some people fight back. And when they do, the truth has a way of destroying everything built on lies. My battery technology is powering a cleaner future. The engineers I work with are treated with respect and given credit for their innovations. And somewhere, a former CEO is teaching ethics classes, hopefully understanding that genius isn't something you can steal, it's something you have to earn. Justice always finds its way. You just have to be patient enough to document the crime, brave enough to fight back, and principled enough to never compromise who you are for someone else's profit. I'm Caleb Durant. They stole my idea. I made them pay for it. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Justice always finds its way. I'm Zach. And this was another true tale of revenge. You think that was wild? Wait till you hear what happened when a man discovered his business partner was embezzling millions while secretly sleeping with his wife. That story drops next week, and trust me, the revenge was absolutely diabolical. What would you have done in Caleb's place? Would you have fought back or taken the severance and moved on? Comment below. I read everyone. And if you know someone who's had their work stolen, share this video. Maybe it'll give them the courage to fight back too.